I'd like to get into kind of, what advice you would have for the next generation of, those college students, high school students, whoever it might be, someone in a different industry trying to get their foot in the door in sports, in, agencies, media, whatever it might be. But, as someone who has hired people before, how do they use their two pieces of paper, their cover letter, their resume? How do they use those to stand out in this process?
Yeah. Oh man,
It's hard.
that's hard. I feel like it's so hard to it's that's the one thing that I don't feel like I am necessarily good at, which you have to be good at to run a startup. And like we've been lucky enough to hire like amazing people. Um, but I don't think I know why. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I don't think I'm very good at just like identifying like, okay, this is the trait you need to have. Or like I trying to it's more of just like a feel thing of interviewing. And I don't think I have a good interview process of, hey, this is what we're looking for. This is what you need to bring to the table. And again, we've been very lucky because we've hired like amazing people and we have an awesome team. But I always think about that as probably my biggest weakness is like the ability to like I want to feel like I really know how to recruit and like vet someone in an interview for the type of person that would fit for the role and for the culture and for those things. And, I still feel like I just do that based on feel, and um, it's tough because then the question of like, okay, well, if you're a candidate, how do you stand out? Honestly, I don't know what to say in terms of like the resume, except for the experience. And when you're younger, because like that's what people are scanning for, right? It's like, do you have relevant experience? And I do think the like harsh reality is even if you're applying for an internship, like they're gonna look at what you're doing, even the most entry level roles. It's not just like cool, everyone apply who doesn't have any experience and we'll just get a feel for the personalities. Like there's always gonna, and that's always the joke of like it's entry level, but you want 2 to 3 years of like social media experience. It's like, um, but that goes back to like, okay, what can you do early in your life and career that can be proactive in giving you like a better resume than somebody else. And that doesn't always mean like, okay, I need to go get an internship at the NFL, which is like really hard to get. It could be like started your own podcast and talk about that experience. It could be, um, something that like you got to basically think of how could I make my own like experiences. And some of that is trying to get internships, networking with anyone you can about these experiences. But there are like opportunities at your disposal, especially these days with the internet. Like there's so many different things you can work on and put yourself out there. Obviously, it's easier if you have clarity of like what you want to do, which I think is like a tough ask of anyone in college and high school. And I don't wouldn't expect or think anyone at that age should know exactly what they want to do. Um, but there's ways you could start building your resume and just thinking about, okay, how could I build my resume with experiences that would be interesting with things that I can control, not saying like, okay, I applied for this big internship and yeah, if I got it, it would look great in my resume, but I didn't get it. So I don't have anything on my resume. You know what I mean? There's always something you could do that can be a good story for your resume. And if you don't know exactly what it is that you want to do, like find something that you're passionate about, but think about it in terms of like, okay, what would like the business version of this be? You know what I mean? Like maybe if you're like, I really want to travel for a year and you're in college and you're like, I'm going to take a gap year and travel for a year. It's like, what can you do during that year besides saying like I traveled the world that you could then talk about in an internship resume? Is it I'm going to travel for a year and try to like work my like I'm going to give myself a $500 budget and I'm going to try to find jobs as I go to like fund this. And that's going to be like my education on like how to actually, and that becomes a story that on an interview would make you stand out versus someone who's just like, yeah, I traveled Europe for a year. Or you could write a travel blog and um, try to get as many followers for that as possible. And yeah, maybe you only get 100, but you could talk about that experience and say, I made myself write one blog every day, and that was my rule, and this ended up happening. Those are the things that I think early in your life and career, you can still do the things you want to do and not know what you want to be next, but start thinking ahead of how this is going to look on my resume, or what can I control that's going to just give me experiences that I could then talk about in a job interview.
Yeah.
There's always something there. And again, like it doesn't have to be getting this like internship. Like that's kind of what people think of classically is like, oh, if I could work for a company, I could have that logo and that experience on my resume. Um, but yeah, the travel thing I just mentioned, if it's like, hey, I'm going to go travel with it's actually a good idea. $20 in my pocket and just see how far I get. And yeah, I have like a lifeline to get bailed out if I needed to. That's a story that if you told on an interview, I think you would get remembered,
Yeah.
especially if you talked about really what you learned and who knows where that could lead you. So that's the sort of stuff that when you're at that age, you want to be having experiences like that, but you also want to be making sure that how could I be intentional about what I'm doing now to have a resume that's a little better than the other people who are applying for this job that are my age.
Yeah. No, for sure. And like that's something not necessarily exclusive to this industry, but it's something that's very cool and unique is like no one's paying me to do this. Like I'm doing it for my own learning, hopefully, helping some people along the way, but like there's so many opportunities where if you're a graphic designer, you can design for anything that's happening in the sports world and make sure and start building your own audience. Like, like you said, the traveling through Europe for a year. It's like make a TikTok account, have a strategy, have an idea, like shoot and edit these videos, like star in these videos. That shows that you can do a lot of the things that we're looking for when we're hiring people. So it's like, yes, it's not, hey, I had an internship with the NFL and then I had another internship with Apple and another internship with the Patriots. It's like, yeah, I mean, I had a couple experiences while I was in school, but these are the three things that are really important to me and things that taught me, X, Y, and Z about the industry. And you could speak really intelligently about what it would take to create something from nothing and take it from, just like we were talking about earlier, like an idea all the way through the 97 steps that it takes to then hit post. If you're already doing that, maybe it's not on this gigantic scale, but all you need is that, that platform to be able to showcase your work to a bigger group of people. So it's like, we're in the like not the I guess the world, but like we're in a world now where like people who don't have these experiences are influencers now that you're trying to get to help your brand achieve their goals. So it's like you don't have to have, it's so much less traditional than it used to be.
Yeah. Especially if you're interested in content and social media, like there's nothing stopping you from creating a social handle or account and start posting content every day. Like nothing at all, right?
Yeah.
So um, there's so many opportunities to be doing the things that you want to be getting into and getting experience doing it. And I'm sure if you had an intern come to you, for the Pirates and they said, yeah, I didn't have any internships in college, but I created like a Pirates TikTok account and I did one video a day on like the news you need to know about the Pirates. And they showed it to you and was like, I made myself do this every day for 360 days. And yeah, you only got 75 followers, or maybe it blows up. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But that's going to be a pretty impressive thing that you're like, wait, you have been posting on TikTok about and it's like, yeah, this is what I learned. This is how I edited these videos. This is how I created content that was better. Like, you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
actually had one that got 1,000 views and that was crazy. And that's going to be like pretty impressive to you. And there's nothing stopping like anybody from doing that sort of a thing, except for obviously just like the will to want to do it. So
Yeah.
there's a lot more opportunity these days to get experiences when you're younger, especially in like digital and social, right? Anyone could start writing and creating content, and they're already doing it for their personal handles as well. So I think if you're interested in social media, it's obviously there's you already have a leg up in that you can try to just start creating content yourself within the topics that you're interested in.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
and then honestly, on the flip side too, there's always like I'm a firm believer that there's a lot of luck in hiring as well. Like it's, you might see four or five people who all have all the experience that you want and need, talk to each of them. One of them is like, this person feels like the person I want to work with every day. And it works out. Sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it's great. And sometimes it's things that you never expected. But it's like, that's why it's so important to do these kind of things and build your resume from, whatever day you start, having that end goal in mind of like, I want to work for a Major League Baseball team someday on the social side. What steps can I take as a high school senior today that in 4 years after college, I have a resume that's going to be valued by these people? So, I mean, like you said, I don't like a high school senior. I had no idea what I wanted to do, and even I think as a freshman in college, I wanted to be an architect for I think a week and a half, and ended up
yeah,
in social media. So it's like the earlier you can figure it out, great. But that doesn't mean if you figured out senior year of college, that doesn't mean you can't do it. It's just your time frame's a little bit more crunched than the others. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's there. The opportunities are endless when it's just, hey, I'm a big Suns fan. I'm going to start a Suns blog or you know, I'm going to design graphics for every single game. Like you said, like really digging in and showing that this stuff means something to you. And even if your graphics aren't great to start, you're going to learn something every time you post something that will get you closer to that goal.
totally. Yeah. If you know what you want to do, there's so many things you could try early on to start giving you experience. And if you don't know what you want to do yet, you just have to think intentionally about like, okay, what can I do that will be an experience that can get me closer to figuring out what I want to do, and at minimum be something on my resume that looks different than others. You could still get into things that are going to make you stand out and can mold you into whatever it is you're going to become. Um, so not knowing what you want to be isn't a hindrance to building up a resume at that age.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's,
And on,
there's ways to do that aren't traditional, like we've been talking about.
yeah. And honestly, like just do something. Like as long as you're doing something, it's either going to get you closer well, it's always going to get you closer, but it's going to like you said, it's either, hey, like I said, I'm a big Suns fan. I made a graphic every game this year. I made 82 graphics. At the end of those 82 days, I hate making graphics. It's like, okay, well, at least you learned not only what it took to do that, but now you know that your career should not go in that direction. It's like an internship doesn't always have to be like a stepping stone along the line of like the same goals. It can be, hey, I have an internship in sports. Kind of liked it, not sure. I'm going to go have an internship in the music industry. Not sure, maybe. Then I'm going to go to an agency. It's like it's all kind of like you said, shaping what your journey is going to become and helping you kind of make those decisions, even if you're kind of undecided.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. But it's I don't know if it's harder than ever or easier than ever in today's world to try to get a job outside of college.
Yeah.
There's definitely there's definitely more opportunity than ever. As every year the internet exists, there's more and more opportunity for anyone to start their own thing. It does seem like the younger generation is more interested in like how could I make my own way and like be an entrepreneur and figure things out. I think because they've seen so many influencers and individual entrepreneurs, in their kind of formative time, right? Like in the last 5 years, like probably most of the people that they're like fans of are these just like self-starting influencers on TikTok. and they've been fed a lot of like, yeah, if I can create good content myself, like I could be my own boss or,
Yeah.
build something myself. So that's kind of an interesting piece of the next generation, which I think is definitely positive. They're seeing so many just like solo entrepreneurs and people who created it themselves. And that's almost
Yeah.
like who the new role models are in
Well,
business for this generation.
yeah, and I mean like and those people are doing something. Like they didn't just, this opportunity didn't just drop in their lap to say like, okay, well you're an influencer now. It's like
Right.
they had to struggle, they had to build, they had to learn like and they had to want it. And so it's like that's the kind of attitude that, when I'm hiring someone, that's what I'm looking for. Like I don't want someone to come in and just expect, every day, stop by my office, I'll tell you what to do and then go home at 5. It's like I want someone who wants to learn, is hungry, is bringing new ideas, is just ready for whatever might be next and wants to grow. So it's like even that mindset of just like, I have to do this myself. I have to build it myself. And, maybe you don't become the TikTok influencer you want, but you just learned a ton about how to be successful in a company so that then maybe someday you could go back to doing your own thing. But it's like those skills are so transferable back and forth.
Definitely.